Welcome everyone to a new episode of Rocket Lab Weekly. This is the last episode before Q1 earnings, and we have an amazing guest, Scotto. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and in this episode, we're going to go through the news that happened this week. There's quite some interesting news. There's some, I give you guys a preview. So it looks like there is no permission to have methalox as a fuel until the end of next year in wallops. And that's very problematic because how you're going, like, that's the rocket fuel for Neutron. And if Neutron is going to fly this year, then they need to sneak in that fuel somehow. So that's number one. Number two is there's new pictures. Thank you, Francisco, for sharing it on the Neutron infrastructure being built out. And after all the news is done, we're going to dive nerdily deep into the numbers on Q1 and what we can expect from the stock. So it's going to be an interesting episode. Please make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. And if you want to become a channel member and have some cool signs next to your name when you comment, then you're welcome to do that. And Scotto's channel and Twitter is in the description box below. So please make sure that you guys show him some love. Awesome. So how was your week with the portfolio?
I mean, honestly, I don't know. I've got a little 1-year-old running around, so I'll check it like maybe once a day. And I guess overall good. Like Tesla just keeps continuing to go up, and that's not the majority of my portfolio, but like a reasonable chunk of it. So I thought had a horrible earnings, but great guidance, and the market seems to only be fixating on the great guidance. So overall portfolio has been fine. Selfishly, I was hoping a Rocket Lab would continue to dip because I'm still trying to add to that, but it is what it is. We'll see what happens next week, I guess, right?
Yeah. I think the Rocket Lab, it was a nice relief for me, at least, because my portfolio, I only have two stocks, Palantir and Rocket Lab. And due to an option accident, like I actually have a little bit of margin on my account, and it went very close to the margin limit on my account. So I was breathing out that Rocket Lab would be going up. And I think it's a nice release, but my honest opinion is that we don't know if we're going to revisit those levels. I'm hoping not, but we went down 50% in a straight line, basically since Christmas. We've been just going down, and that's obviously unsustainable. But we see what happens from here.
Mm-hmm.
So on the news side, let's. I think we should start with this Neutron article.
Get the bearish stuff out of the way first.
Yeah, exactly. So I can just quickly go over a few lines. So NASA is kicking off a formal environmental assessment of its facilities on Wallops, Virginia, to increase the number of authorized rocket launches at the site by almost 200%. And this was the slides and the recordings of an internal meeting that was viewed by this TechCrunch. What's a little bit about misleading is like whose internal meeting. They're not clear. Yeah, they're not clear on this. So then they're talking about that this eases the congestion that is in other spaceports in the country, mainly due to SpaceX. And so here is, I just want to show you guys this part that we referenced in the beginning. So the Wallops Island, blah, 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 as the agency calls the undertaking, will study potential consequences of massive increase in annual launches from 18 to 52. The study will also consider other critical changes to the site, like water barge landings of rockets, first stages, and on-site storage of liquid methane, a novel rocket fuel. So this was the first clue, I guess, also what you reacted on. And then if you read to the end of the article, it's saying that that would authorize these actions sorry, no. I don't have a highlighter. I read it specifically before the show so that
I think it's like right at the last line. It says like the time frame you're looking for.
Yeah.
It says because of the scope of the various environmental assets, the full environmental assessment process is projected to take around 18 months per one slide, with the final document published in December 2025.
Exactly. So if you understand this correctly, or we understand this correctly, it can potentially mean that there is no permission to have the fuel of Neutron on the Wallops facilities until late 2025. So, Scott, what are your thoughts about this? And yeah.
Well, I've seen a lot of like back and forth about it online, and some people like even somebody sent me an article for it. It's mentioned actually a little earlier as well, is there is some documentation from 2019 that does mention methane engines being used on site. But then, as you see in this TechCrunch article, it's strange that they're mentioning that they're waiting on permissions to store methane on site. I guess past that, I'm curious what they are identifying as storage. Like when you think of Starbase, for example, they have like all those tanks set up. And I'm wondering if that's what they mean as storage, or if like for the interim, if Neutron could just have trucks be brought out to it. I don't know how many trucks that would be, if that would even make sense, or if that would be considered storage too, but kind of have like a temporary system where it's kind of inefficiently hauled in just for those first couple launches while they're waiting for these permissions. But I mean, I'm sure that the Rocket Lab team has already gone through this though, right? Like, I'm sure that they're not just like, oh, whoops, yeah, we forgot about the fuel. I'm sure they've got something in place, some sort of like temporary permissions. I hope. I don't know. What's your takeaway?
Yeah, I'm a real estate developer in Sweden, and we sometimes have similar problems with our projects that, you need to start certain things, and then, certain processes take longer time than what you have. And usually there's some ways around it. Usually, like if it depends on how important your project is to the government that you're working for, and who the people handling, like how solution oriented the people who are handling it are. Yeah, like what we have experienced is, for example, like you have to start a building, and certain like either environmental or like certain things are not fully researched, like by the engineers. And then usually then they can divide up the permissions into like, okay, you don't get the full permission to start all of the building, but you have a permission to start working on the grounds for the site, and start clearing up so that the building can start on time. And then the second stage of the permission is conditioned on certain other things being done. So I think that they will be able to get something like this done.
Or I'm really hoping so too. And there was one other, let me just find it quick. There was one other thing that kind of stuck out to me in this article. And I guess this would kind of like tie into a larger conversation, but where was it mentioned that today, of the 18 annual launches authorized, only six can involve liquid fuel rockets, with the other 12 being solid propellant rockets. The reason that this stuck out to me is because since this site has been hosting the Electron, Rocket Lab they keep saying 12 launches from Virginia, one a month. But according to this, if there's only 6 available, that means that is not entirely truthful, dare I say. It's not what's, and I don't know if they meant down the road, but I've been going over my notes, like leading into earnings and whatnot. And there's a couple of inconsistencies regarding launch cadence that I noticed as well. Like, for example, they mentioned that they have the manufacturer or the architecture built for 50 launches per year. But then it was just 2 weeks after that comment that Adam Spice also mentioned that they're fully booked at 22 launches. And I'm kind of like, well, you said 50, but you can only do 22. But then there's other articles where they're like, we can do 132. I mean, 132 launch slots granted. But I'm like, is it 132 or is it 50 or is it 22 or it, and then you see that and I'm kind of like, is there a disconnect in like who's saying what? And then you have like the additional comments of Adam saying 1 Neutron launch in the first year, 3 in the second, 8 in the third, but then Peter Beck's like, no, 5 in the third year. I'm looking for a lot of clarification on this upcoming call, like not only with the launch capacity, but I mean a lot of things, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we're gonna go into the call later. I mean, here I would give them the benefit of the doubt because again, because of having to deal with the government here in Sweden, which is also like a very bureaucratic entity, there is like, if you know that there is solutions, like let's say if you know that you can launch, like you have permission to launch 6 liquid fuel rockets, but then the government tells you that, okay guys, if you do reach the 6, like we don't have the capacity to do an environmental research, but if you do reach the 6, then you can use this backdoor and then we can approve 2 more, or whatever more launches. And I think that this is more what is happening.
And I've been invested in Tesla for like many years. I want to preface with that because if you've been tracking for Tesla for a lot of years, it's you'll know that the big players like to play dirty. And I'm not sure which other engines at Wallops might be using methane, but part of my concern is, put on your tinfoil hat. But if some guys at Lockheed or whatever other institution are kind of like, hey, that methane situation, what if you just slowed that down a little bit, gave, relativity, for example, a chance to catch up, or that kind of a thing, right? So that's another thing that I don't know. It's I always like to kind of not be bearish on the company, obviously, but just kind of take both sides and have that kind of level of concern, especially with a blossoming company that is like Rocket Lab or like Tesla was.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you could be right, or like theoretically it's possible that this could happen. But what makes me calm about this is 2 things. Like Peter Beck has been very good on handling the government. I mean, he got a treaty between New Zealand and the United States, and and one of the reasons why they went to Wallops is because instead of competing for the Florida or the California pads, where it was already like they would be a very small fish in a very big pond, they went to Wallops, where they are the big fish. And if I'm not mistaken, the government is helping them and giving them grants to build out the factory, right? If I remember.
It sounds right. I think it's in the range of 10 million.
Yeah.
So I think that's sick for like bridges and infrastructure and whatnot. Something in that range. I think it's 7, maybe even. Maybe someone in the chat could let us know.
Yeah, and usually when you have that, it's like you're very aligned with the government, and like that means that they want jobs, they want Rocket Lab to succeed, and then I think that they will like fast walk these things through to let Rocket, because it would be very bad. Like if Virginia is serious about having a spaceport, it would look horrible that they start doing an environmental survey and then they don't approve Methalox, which is like the future fuel of rockets. And if they appear, very bureaucratic and hard to deal with, then I guess the other startups will not want to go to Virginia because they're just hard to deal with. So I think what you're saying is theoretically possible, but based on these things, like I think it's not likely that they will have trouble with this.
I hope not. Yeah, we'll see. I'm sure it's just one of those things that I'm being overly cautious about. Like that's kind of something that you're probably familiar with if you've seen my videos, is I'm
definitely
overly cautious at times. But I mean, oh well.
Yeah. I mean, definitely my mistakes in investing so far has been to be too brave and
Yeah.
being not thinking enough with risk, you know. So
Exactly. Yeah.
it's a good balance, you know,
Yeah.
between you and me.
Good.
Cool. So I just want to go over some other news on that there has been. I was actually thinking if I should take this up on Rocket Lab Weekly or not, but there has been so much like little good news with Rocket Lab this week, like a lot of past missions doing good, a lot of coming missions. So I was thinking we just go through the list and we quickly comment on the ones that we can comment on. But so first off, the pre-fire launches are coming closer. You actually did a video this week about them, that it's very strange that they were like moved out, scheduled to August, and then they were postponed indefinitely, and then somehow they were brought back into May. I'm actually curious what I was thinking. Was it that the satellites had, let's say, like 7 targets, and one of them was like very technically challenging, and then they were like, oh, we need more time on this, delay it to August, and then someone on management was like, no, F that, then we only have 6 instead of 7, and then we can launch now? Or what do you think happened?
Like, I really have no idea. And I think like the biggest surprise of all of that, in my opinion, is that it was NASA of all people to be like, well, no, bring that back in, rather than just be like, yeah, push it out. We'll get to it when you get to it, kind of a thing. I don't know. It was strange. And it was kind of funny too, because somebody had posted in Discord, they're like, oh, the May missions for pre-fire. And I'm like, no, these are actually August or no, at that time I was like, no, these are going to be Q3 at earliest. And they're like, no, you idiot, they're in May. Like, and I was like, wait, what? Like, what is going on here? It's just kind of, yeah, it's very surprising. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we see. Hopefully, there is no delays. Then here's the next news. The spacecraft is going to Mars. Blue and Gold and Twin Explorer spacecraft for NASA and UCBSSL are entering the final stages of build and test before heading to Mars to study the planet's magnetosphere this year. So I believe that these are the ones that are going to fly on Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket. Am I correct on this one?
You are, yeah. They're set to take off. I've heard October, but I'm pretty sure it's actually September 29th.
Okay. I'm very worried about them not like being delayed and not making that deadline. And it's that their first real launch that they're getting, and they're starting with a Mars mission. I mean, SpaceX, just to put it in context, when they shot up on Falcon Heavy, Musk's what do you call it, Tesla Roadster, with the, what was the mannequin called?
I think it's just Spaceman.
Yeah, Spaceman. Yeah. So that one was supposed to go into orbit around Mars. And that was SpaceX after having launched, I don't know, probably 50 Falcon 9s, having done a lot of missions. And they messed up the burns, and Spaceman didn't make it into Mars orbit. And that was after a lot of experience. And somehow New Glenn is starting like their first ever launch. Is like, okay, we're going to Mars. And I really hope that they're going to succeed, but I don't know if yeah.
Like, I would bet against it. I was wrong, by the way. It was Starman. I said Spaceman, I think. Starman. But like
Starman.
there's, I don't know. I wish them the best, obviously, because it's I mean, rising tide raises all ships, but I'm also like, I don't know. Good luck.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
Exactly. But I'm pretty sure that when Rocket Lab ships these things, like, they will get paid regardless of what happens with New Glenn, and their space systems is doing good. It's NASA that is the end customer on this, right?
I'm actually not sure about that.
Okay. In any case, so for Rocket Lab, it's as soon as it leaves the door, they should get paid, and then it's good for Rocket Lab. Then the next news is Ashley Vance. This is actually going to be, so Francisco says, yes, it's NASA. So the next news is actually pretty crazy for me. Ashley Vance, who wrote a super good book that I recommend to anyone and everyone who wants to know about Rocket Lab, When the Heavens Went on Sale. Did you read that book, by the way?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. And do you think it's a good book for Rocket Lab investors to read?
It's a must read for Rocket Lab investors. Yeah. Like I feel like, well, Peter Beck is definitely kind of a quieter, closed off CEO. Like, you don't know too much about his personal life, but that book I feel like gave such good insight into like just who he was as a person growing up, and it's kind of like charming in a way too, the kind of backstory of him and his wife and how they met. And he would, when they were kind of like courting, he would she's also an engineer, it's important to note, he would text her and be like, hey, I'm going to try some sort of, whatever kind of propulsion experiment he was working on at the time. He's like, hey, just letting you know, I'm going to try something out here. So if I don't text you back in an hour,
Call
so that's
kind
of how they fell in love. So I thought that was kind of charming. It was a just cute little backstory for both of them. And not only the personal stuff, but just to understand the grit that he has as a CEO and a founder. It was great. Even the stuff, it also covers Astra Space, love him or hate him. It covers Firefly, and it covers Planet Labs as well. And it's just all around, just each of those companies, it could be its own book. It's just a great read.
Yeah. And so basically, this author is coming out with a documentary which seems to be centered around Rocket Lab and the rivalry between Rocket Lab and Astra. And I basically retweeted his tweet, and I wrote that I really liked the book. So this film must be amazing. And the only thing I'm afraid of is I might want to buy more Rocket Lab shares. And the author actually answered that I'm gonna need a bigger boat after watching this thing. And then we started communicating on X, and I told him about Rocket Lab Weekly, and he agreed that he might come on, which is very crazy. So maybe
cool.
Like next week is going to be about earnings and the aftermath of earnings, but maybe in 2-3 weeks we're going to have Ashley Vance. Nothing is. He gave me his personal email, and I was totally starstruck, and I have to craft an email to nail the details, but that's pretty crazy. So
no kidding. Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, thank you. We have Peter back here in the comments. This is always
perfect.
Yeah, I think the stock will drop after earnings due to the following: Neutron delayed further out than anyone is predicting, Electron cadence lower than guidance, EPS miss due to increased expenses. Yeah, it could be. The thing is, I think that a Neutron delay is pretty much priced in at this point. So it's how much Neutron delay are we speaking about? Like, I think that's the question. Mm-hmm. What do you think about this?
I don't know what to think. I think that I don't know. They've either done the launch and are just being quiet, and I think we're going to get a blowout on Monday, or we're going to get some terrible news. I don't think it's well. I shouldn't say terrible news. I think they'll kind of kick the can down the road. They might say like, okay, no, we're to pad in Q4, but then a launch in Q1. And like honestly, I'm kind of like, that's what I'm expecting, like the first half of next year. But we'll see. There's a lot hinging on Monday for sure.
Yeah, it would be so amazing if you remember how when they had the Electron failure, and then Peter did this 5-10 minute section where he very technically explained like what happened. And I'm like, if he could do such a one on the Archimedes engine of like, what is it that is delaying it? And by the way, I had this thought that in this article that we were showing, let me see if I can share it again. Like somewhere they mentioned that the engine fire test with the methane is also not covered in this environmental thing. So I was like, could it be that they're just not getting the approval to test it yet? Like they're literally ready and they're waiting for, but yeah.
I don't think so, because I think this one would be exclusively for wallops, and like I think this would be more for the hot fire, like once it's on the pad and they like light everything up. But I think the actual like testing of the Archimedes, like what we're all holding our breath for, I think that'll be at a different location. I'm pretty sure that location's all set for methane and whatnot.
Okay.
And I think worst case too is if it's just the one engine being tested, I'm sure they could just bring in a temporary setup, like a truck filled with methane, for example, just for the day, rather than needing like a full-blown storage tank. But I'm pretty sure they have all the infrastructure for that.
Yeah, because this delay, I mean, we're not on the earnings section yet, but it doesn't make sense in a way that in previous earnings calls and conferences, like they have said that, you know, they have tested the design, they have come to a conclusion on the design and the technical factors. They have tested the individual components and theories that they work, and now they just need to do the, you know, like the full test. And how do you call it? Like, it doesn't make sense that if they tested everything, then everything was a pass, then you shouldn't have a technical reason to not do the test. Like, you should do the test and then, oh my God, this didn't work. Okay, back to the drawing table. But it's really weird that there is a stop somewhere. So it would be really amazing if they could give like a very detailed lineup of what's holding back this Archimedes fire test.
Mm-hmm. I think either way we get a lot of information, whether it's for better or for worse.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so just to finish off on the news, so there is a new documentary coming. Then this is a satellite that was on their latest launch. And the news here is that it's 1 week or something into flight and it's working as it's intended. And this is testing a brand new technology of solar sails. And it's very exciting. I don't know if you have any comments on this.
No, nothing on that one.
Yeah, and then the next one is that they have made a movie about manufacturing medicine in space. And I asked them actually on Twitter, didn't get an answer yet on when do they think we can see this movie. That would be very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next news is that they reached a milestone, and I think this was 2 launches ago when they launched the Adrias J spacecraft that is also testing a new technology to deorbit space debris, and it went very close to this Japanese rocket booster, and the mission is going as planned. Do you have any?
I think that seems to be very on par with what was the name of it? Victus Hayes?
Yeah,
or was it the other one? Yeah, it very similar. So I think a lot of what they're going to be learning from this one here, I'm sure would translate as far as, I mean, this isn't the Rocket Lab craft, granted, but as far as like the like precision timing of, you know, when exactly to launch and how to, you know, efficiently bring the Electron to arrive at the secondary spacecraft. I think there's a lot of learnings that they'll be able to take away from this one.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, this is what I meant, that, you know, these news, like, they're good to know that they happened, but it's not like, you know, we can't really, I mean, it's just what it is. Like, that's the news. It's like a lot has happened and a small good news.
Mm-hmm.
Here is a bigger piece of good news. Francisco sent this to me just before the weekly, actually, and that is progress photos on the Neutron production facility in Wallops, Virginia. And based on these photos, it's really coming along nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Have you
I'm
seen
actually
these
surprised
photos?
how quickly it's coming up. Yeah.
So, and look, again, this adds to, I'm curious on your opinion on this, because this adds to the mystery for me, because obviously they're cranking out the pad, they're cranking out these buildings. When you look at Rocket Lab's Twitter, they are, you know, recruiting for Neutron. So there's like a lot of things that are showing that the development is happening at a very high speed. But where is the test?
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm kind of leaning towards like maybe it's already happened. I really hope so. I think it's going to be like market closes on Monday and we're going to get a video. It's going to be like,
Yeah,
here's
could
our
be.
engine. It's live. Let's go. Like it's got to be that. I don't know. I hope so.
Yeah, it's funny. Andy McConchie, I probably butchered that name. Maybe the engine test is not as important to Rocket Lab as it is to us. So that's also, by the way, very possible because, you know, we are long-term investors, but we are following Rocket Lab very, very closely. And I'm not sure that we got updates on the other milestones. Like it was more like the earnings came and then they showed this graph and then, you know, it's like we're here on the milestone. So maybe Rocket Lab doesn't watch Rocket Lab Weekly and they don't know how freaked out we are about the engine test, and then they're just like, this is good content for the earnings, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Oh. Sorry, I disappeared for a second. I clicked somewhere wrong. So I think now we're done with the news and we can go into earnings. Scott, how do you want to do this? Because I know you had a very detailed earnings table. Do you want to go off of that, or should I go off of their presentation and then we go through the numbers?
Maybe start with the presentation and then we can go from there because mine's for Q1 anyways. It's more or less built upon what they've guided for. Okay.
So this is their Q1 guidance in their last presentation. They're guiding for 92 to 98 million.
Sorry,
which
Vince,
we have
can
to.
Can you just double check
Yep.
that the screen's up? I'm not sure if the viewers are able to see that.
Let me see. Oh yeah, it's not up. Thank you for telling me. Let me just fix it. Okay, now it should be up.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, here we go. So 92 to 98 million. This guidance has been lowered, I think, from 96 to 104 million. And that I believe is because of this fifth launch that never happened. The space systems revenue is 60 to 65 million, and the rocket launch is 32 to 33 million. So actually the big difference is in the space systems. We know that 4 launches has occurred. So I'm pretty sure that they're going to do the 32 to 33 million. What do you think the revenue is that they're going to come in with?
I have 95 on the dot, and this consists of that mid range of the launch revenue because I think it's such a tight range already, and if they landed within there, it's they knew what exactly to expect for that. And then for the space systems revenue, same thing. We went with the mid of the most recent guidance. They did originally have higher guidance that was released during Q3 for Q1, and then they brought that down a little bit. And I think that's because MDA is a little bit behind schedule or something. I'm not sure what, but
wasn't it the fifth launch that because because they brought it down with.
But for space systems revenue as well, it was originally 65 to 68, and then they brought that down to 60 to 65.
Okay,
so they brought it down by 5 million, give or take, at the mid range.
Yeah,
and I think that was from a slight slapback with the MDA satellites.
Okay. Yeah, it's very hard, like in my other companies or other company. Because I'm looking at Tesla, that's why I said like other companies. Like on Palantir, you see that they're doing boot camps, and it's very easy to get like a good idea of how the company is doing behind the scenes and between earnings. And on Tesla, you see the deliveries, and you see the newer versions of autopilot, and it's very easy to follow. Rocket Lab Space Systems is very hard for me to get an idea in between earnings because it's in a closed in confidential factory, and then you just get an image of like, now we're shipping this satellite. And
not only that, it's like their merchant components, if you go on their website and look, like how much are the radios, how much are the reaction wheels, the star trackers, etc., those prices haven't been updated. And not just the prices, but like the quantity of how many are in space, for example. Like the website is very updated. It's like not just the pricing, but like how many, can't remember if it was reaction wheels or star trackers, but something was mentioned in a recent interview, and I was like, well, that doesn't add up. They said, I can even bring it up if you just give me 1 second here.
Yeah.
It was, so I think on their website they still have that there's 240 reaction wheels in orbit right now, and that's been up for like a couple, since Q4 of 2021. And then in a recent interview, where is this from? A recent paper that was published regarding the reaction wheels, they mentioned 360. So I'm like, why wouldn't you guys update that? That's a very big difference.
Yeah, it's funny because also Francisco also sends me a lot of stuff that they change on the website. And sometimes I wonder because, like every business has a different funnel of how they get customers,
Mm-hmm.
And for some businesses, it's like, for example, Tesla, you order on the website, right? So it would be like they would get killed if the website is not accurate, right? But I'm like, does Rocket Lab actually have customers who go like, I want to order a satellite. Okay, Google, cheapest satellite near me, and then it comes up like sponsored link, Rocket Lab, we manufacture. And it's like, how much it costs? Okay, it's 5 million. Okay, let's give them a call. I want to order it from the website, and I don't know how they get the customers, but I'm pretty sure not like this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, like it might be that it's on the space fairs or space symposiums. They build relationships with customers, and then they fly and visit the factory, and then anyways they negotiate. And so I don't know how they get the customers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was going to say another recent interview with Adam Spice. He mentioned like the Neutron is on track, and it's exactly what we said it was going to be, but he's also saying that it's going to cost between 250 to 300 million. But then you go back to like when it was originally announced and they said 200 million. So I'm kind of like, that's not actually what you guys said, but like, given the whole inflation thing, sure. Right. Because 200 is not the same 200 it was a few years ago. But then to what we're talking about with these space systems components, I don't know what happens if somebody is like, hey, I want to buy this part for 50,000. And then they're like, oh, whoops, no, sorry, that's 80,000 or whatever it is now. I'm sure a lot of people would be like, well, no, I don't know if that's to kind of hook them into the customer, the pipeline, or, you know what I mean? Like if you go to the store expecting to spend $20 and then it rings in at 30 or 40, you're going to be like, hey, come on, like what's going on here?
Yeah, I'm quite sure. I totally see your point, but I'm quite sure that whatever the prices are on the website, that there is negotiations. Like on so let's say that on the website it says 50,000, and then they go into the negotiations, and they're like, okay, but if you order this much, and you order it together with this, and just for you, just now, like it will be 30,000. Like I'm very, very sure on this, and that's also why they are not updating the prices. Otherwise, I'm sure it would be updated.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of tricky too, trying to figure out what was going on with the reaction wheels, because it's like, are they going to give that bulk buy discount of 20% like they would with the Electron bulk buys, or would that be 20% off the reaction wheels if you buy 100, or 30% if you buy 500, or what have you, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. Francisco commented, it's hard to order online. I had a CEO of a company reach out to me to try to get solar cells from Rocket Lab. He told me that they are not replying to him. If anyone knows how to contact, please let me know. Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting. Which can I ask Francisco which CEO this was? Yeah, we see if he, like, which company is he the CEO of?
Seems like
Okay.
there's a few updates that they're needing to do. I was left on red from investor relations. This guy's left on red for the solar cells. The website components need updating. Like,
Yeah,
let's get some of
exactly.
our guys in there.
Exactly. Or, maybe the whole Rocket Lab team is just working on Neutron and people are coming up like, Peter, can we update the website? And it's like, we don't have time. Go work on Neutron.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so. Okay, so back to the earnings. So you think that they're going to come in at 95
95,
million.
yeah.
Okay. And on the gross margin, because like I'm thinking like what can happen to the stock price and how Wall Street would look at these numbers, and I'm very sure that the revenue is going to be fine, but where I'm worried is what if they have full of extra costs on the Neutron development and their loss is going to be bigger than expected. So I'm curious, what is your prediction on this?
I guess I'll kind of answer in two parts, because the first thing that kind of stuck out to me is the margins. They're expecting between 24 to 26, but if you look at the last quarter that they had 3 launches, actually the past 2 quarters, so that'd be Q2 and Q3 of 2023. Actually, Vince,
here.
do you mind if I just bring this up? Or
No, go ahead. You can bring it up.
Okay, I just hit present, right? Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Okay,
and then you choose that.
Hopefully it lets me here.
While we're waiting, I just want to answer one comment from Jim3482. What was what was it that made you pull the trigger when you opened your position in Rocket Lab? And I like to research companies that I invest in for hundreds and hundreds of hours, and I read this When the Heavens Went on Sale. I did a lot of research on Rocket Lab, and when I got in, it was first when the price was at 422. We lost Scotto here. He clicked on something wrong. And it was after a failed Electron launch. And just before that, Peter Beck sold some of his shares, which I thought was over dramatized by the market. And the stock has very substantially dipped. And I did my valuation, and I came to a fair value of Rocket Lab at between $6 to $8. And I thought that it was a very, very good point to enter the stock. So that's why I acted with urgency, because sometimes it happens that you do a lot of research on a company like Shopify, for example. I'm extremely bullish on the company, but the stock is very, very expensive, So on Rocket Lab, I felt like it was this other thing, that the stock is very undiscovered, is very cheap. It had a series of unlucky events, and that's what made me pull the trigger.
Okay, are you able to see my screen now, Vince?
Yeah, let me share it.
Okay.
I wonder if you can zoom in a little bit, because it's very small numbers.
Is that a bit better there?
Yeah.
Okay, that's enough to bring us out to operating margin and whatnot. Okay, so where were we? They mentioned gross margin range of 24 to 26%, but if we look back to Q2 and Q3, these both had 3 launches in each quarter. And you'll notice that this is a bit of guesswork as far as the split between the Space Systems margins, but the overall does match the 26% that they're guiding for. And I wasn't quite sure what the split might be between those two, because either we're going to launch is going to meet the 22 to 27 range that we saw previously, but I think this might actually be dragged down because of what Q4 was like.
So Q4 was 23, if I...
Negative 23, negative 24. Yeah. Or sorry, which one was that? Q3?
Yeah, because you said that, sorry, Q4, because you said that it's going to be similar, but in Q4 they did have positive gross margins, no?
Gross margins, yes, but the launch was really drugged down.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I'll just zoom out a bit. This purple section up top, this is the launch section, and then the next section down, this is space systems, and then the dark gray, this is the two combined. So this is the total section. So they're each broken up by revenue, cost of goods sold, and then the profit and margin.
Okay. So you
sorry, I should
also
explain
have
that up front.
Yeah, no problem. So you also have 26% gross margin.
Yes, yeah, right down here. So
Yeah.
this aligns with the actual guidance, as you can see from that note from the cell, from there.
And by the way, I just want to mention this, that Scotto has a Patreon where you can get access to his super detailed and very good valuation models and tables. He's very gracious to share this. This might be almost paid material that you guys would normally not have access to. So it's very gracious that he's doing this. And if you want to support him, his link is in the description box below.
Yeah. And for the viewers, this goes all the way out to 2030 and includes price targets and whatnot, and ultimately is ideally funding this becoming a more full-time endeavor. So it's the price of a cup of coffee. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, awesome.
So as far as the margins, we have that 26 for the overall. And like I mentioned, I wasn't sure how this would be split exactly because this is not guided for. So I just kind of went with a bit of a happy medium. I think this will beat, and I think that Rocket Lab is guiding for, I think they're sandbagging a little bit.
You mean on the gross margin or on the space systems, or
just I think for the overall margins, and I'm not sure how the split will end up being. I think that it'll be higher than 23% for the launch margins. And you can see if we go back, for space systems revenue, we have like 34, 20, 24, 20, very healthy margins as far as that goes. And keep in mind, I'm expecting this to be more on par with Q4 because a lot of the reason that the space systems margins took a hit is during the periods where they acquired ASI and PSC, Solero especially. Those took a big hit of margins, as you can see right here from Q4. They drug it all the way down to 12%. And Adam Spice has mentioned that was the big drag, and that you can expect once the backlog from Solero kind of picks up, and once they kind of like churn through that backlog, you can expect to see, I think they guided for 40%, what do they call it, non-GAAP or adjusted gross margins, but I just go with GAAP because it's
yeah. Okay, so basically you think that they come in line with revenue, come in line on gross margin and on the loss. So that's the adjusted EBITDA loss. That's the one that I'm worried about. So what is your projection there?
Mine ends up being a little bit lower. They're guiding for negative 30 to negative 28, and I'm right around negative 35.
Okay. And I'm just curious, like, how do you calculate this? Because I have such a hard time to see into their like inner workings. As I said, like I find Tesla and Palantir much easier to follow in between earnings. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about your process on how you get this.
For the for this upcoming quarter, for example, it's fairly easy. All of the blue cells, these are what is guided for.
Yeah.
To take that a step further as well, we can look at the entirety of 2024, and we basically know what the backlog recognition is going to be for the full year of 2024. Space systems in particular, because it's not so lumpy like launch is. This is currently set for all of the launches to actually be successful. So if we scroll all the way down to the Electron section, you'll notice that we have the 4 launches from this quarter. Those are locked in. And then I'm expecting 4 currently. This can all be downloaded and updated if the viewers are interested. But right now, if like basically any manipulation you make to the number of launches or to the margins or to literally anything will kind of update the overall model. So yeah, for this, I'm expecting 4, 4, 6, and 8 for the year, and that brings us to the full total 22 launches. Although there may be a couple more that are announced during earnings that are recent. There's a little bit of commentary. I think we mentioned on the last video that we were together, but there's a couple of haste missions that seem to have materialized potentially this year. So I don't know if that means they're hitting 23, 24 launches, but all in all, this is set for 22 launches for the year.
Cool. And how do you think with the operational loss? Like, because I feel that depends mostly on investments into Neutron. Or maybe I'm wrong on this. No, yeah, because Adam Spice also said that like the cash burn and the loss like increases in Q4 and Q1, and then it should start to go down as they get closer to launching Neutron.
Let me see. I don't think I have a chart for that. I like to have I have a section down below where there's just like the visuals that you can see. I don't think I have one for R&D and SG&A, for example. But the way that is calculated is more or less taking just quotes from recent interviews. Adam Spice has mentioned that they're planning to invest another 100 million into Neutron this year, and that going forward next year, that's going to start to wind down. So a bit of that is like, I wouldn't call it guesswork, but sort of. It's kind of like referencing past quarters during the past 3 years, we'll call it. You notice that like the overall total OpEx is 20-30 million dollar range, and that's probably what we can expect to come down to again after the overall Neutron spend is winding down. Because not only is it the Neutron spend, but that is also going to be the space systems or the spacecraft programs. Those are also having a meaningful cut as far as like the research and development portion of those. So I think that we're kind of like going to have a hump for total operating expenses for 2024, and then assuming all goes well, you'll start to kind of see that wind down once the Neutron kind of becomes more of a final product again.
Yeah. We have a good comment here from Jim. What Rocket Lab needs in the short term is a management member who has had some experience with running a public company and knows how to deal with Wall Street and their expectations. I mean, just to answer this comment, I think that it's very easy to see from here and give them advice when we don't know what they are going through. And as I said, I'm a real estate developer, which also has we have to deal a lot with governments and permits, and we also have investors in the company. And I'm very sympathetic to, because sometimes the investors are like, okay, how long is it until you get a building permit? And then you logically can say, let's say that it's 3 months, but there's so many things that can go wrong, and then you have to be able to say it in a way to the investors that it becomes very tricky to communicate, because it's not like Tesla is producing 10,000 cars of Model Ys this week, and then they're asking, can you also produce 10,000 Model Ys next? Like when you have done everything and everything and the lines are grooved in, and so I think it must be tough. And if they would over communicate, it can potentially, they can shoot themselves in the foot after. So I think that, as the Swedish say, we just need to have ice in the stomach at this point and trust that management is going to pull this off. And to be honest, we are getting a very de-risked price on the stock, in my opinion. Like, by every analyst that I read and by my calculations, the stock price should be much higher, so that takes a little bit the risk out of us owning the stock at a very, very low point, but it doesn't make it less annoying. So I sympathize with this question. Cool. So we went through revenue, gross margin, loss, and you're expecting everything to come in line. is there anything? So my question is, what do you think can come up on earnings that affects the stock positively or negatively?
Positively is going to be news about the reaction wheel customer. That's been a long time coming, and kind of did. There was I should have sent you the article actually, but there was like this like scientific document that was published in September of 2023. It was like this big symposium where all these scientists get together and publish papers at the same time. I could maybe try to find it, but it almost sounded like all the qualification has been done for both varieties of the reaction wheel that's coming out of Auckland as of last year. Like I said, the paper was published in September, and it sounded like they were one wheel was ready to go, and the second was expected to be completed by the end of the year. And the reason that they were so confident is because the two different wheels, they share a lot of similar parts. The only difference is a bit of hardware. One is a little bit more durable, is able to be a little bit more farther out, past just like your typical low Earth orbit. And it also, in that article, or that whatever you call document, it mentioned or alluded to these reaction wheels going out already, like pretty much at the end of the year or early this year. So it's I'm not sure why we haven't heard anything yet, but maybe this is the earnings call where we finally get that news. Adam mentioned like we'll receive news in the next couple of quarters, and that was like 2 or 3 months ago. So we're pretty much in that window where, and especially
Did you mean 2 or 3 quarters ago, or 2 or 3 months ago?
Let me see. I just finished compiling all my notes. Oh, what's going on here? Let me see exactly what he said. So reaction wheels. Oh shoot! Sorry, I don't have it. I thought I had it ready. But
no problem. And by, just for listeners who have not seen Scott's videos, what he means is that you did a calculation on, because we know the backlog of what the backlog of Rocket Lab is, and a lot of contracts are announced, and you can see what that is. And we know that they have a contract with. We all suspect it's Amazon, but the point is that the backlog is 1,041 million. We know that the SDA contract was 550 million. So then, you start backing out the numbers, and the point is that this big reaction wheel customer, it doesn't seem like it's in the backlog. And
I found that reference, Vince. It was during the Q4 call. He said,
okay.
Yeah, in the next couple of quarters. So like right away here, I guess we should be getting our announcement as to the size and the scope of whatever this contract becomes.
Yeah. So basically what Scott is referencing is that they have, how did they announce it? Like, I think on one of the earnings, they said that they made, or they have an undisclosed a big order for reaction wheels, or...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that was kind of it. And then throughout the years, they've mentioned that they're building a line, and then there's been a lot of different quotes, and some are a little bit like not very clear. Like they've mentioned 2,000 wheels at one point, 3,000 wheels at one point, but it seems like with more recent commentary, I think 2,000 is your safe bet, and yeah, it seems like they're ready to go.
Yeah. So basically you did this math, and if you back out every contract of the backlog, then this doesn't seem to be included in the backlog, or it's included at a very marginal amount. And if they would announce that, it would be a significant, like the backlog could grow by, I guess, hundreds of millions of dollars. Like if this contract gets calculated, it would be super bullish for the stock. And not sure why it's not announced. I'm sure they have their reasons. It's one of those things that it would be nice to get the clarification on.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so that was your, like, what would be bullish for the stock. Is there anything else that you think could be very moving the stock up?
For bullish, the hot fire, of course. I don't know if we'll get it at the same time, like wishful thinking, but if we get the announcement of the hot fire and then right away it's like, oh, and also we've got our customer and here's the launch window for the Neutron, that would all be great news. Just seeing, I made a list. Let's see what else there was on there. It's rumored that that AST is on there, but I think that almost that would be like betting their company on a potential launch, and it seems way too risky for that to be Neutron's first customer. But I mean, that's what the rumor is at the moment. As far as that, I mean, and one other thing too. I mean, this is like the market's not going to care like I would, but news on Electron recoveries. I think that that's not going to be like I mean, it'll be a small needle mover, but like compared to space systems and Neutron, it's going to be nothing. But I do want to hear more about that because it seems like they've kind of just put it to bed and almost forgotten about it.
Yeah. Okay, and what do you think would mess up the stock price? Like, what would be super bearish for the stock if they announce?
I think just a delay, maybe a reduction in Electron launches for the year.
Say that again, that they...
a delay for the hot fire or a reduction in Electron launches for the year. I think that's all that could really move the stock because the space system stuff is pretty much predictable. I mean, we did see that step back with MDA. I'm pretty sure that's what that reduction was. I'm still unclear about the status of if they have launched those or not launched, delivered those, or like when exactly those are expected to be delivered. They're supposed to start in Q1, but the most recent commentary is that they all need to be delivered this year or shipped, I guess. So I'm not sure past the hot fire or a reduction in Electron launches. I'm not sure what kind of negative news we could expect.
Okay, good. So then, like, I think just to, like, I agree with you, and to add to the list, I think that their guidance could be like a very bullish thing for the stock. Like if they could maybe increase the guidance and Q2 could be a over 100 million quarter. Like, I think that would be nice. Contracts and announcements would be nice on the bullish side. On the bearish side, I would want to add on the list if there is cost overruns with Neutron. Like, so if they would have a bigger than expected loss, and then on top of it, they would say that, next quarter the loss is going to be even bigger because Neutron development and this and that would not be good for the stock price.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Cool. And so this is, I always say in my videos that when you make an earnings prediction, it's like shooting yourself in the foot because there's such a high likelihood that you would be wrong. But just for fun, so this is not serious, like what is your prediction? Like, what do you think is going to happen on earnings, and how is the stock going to react to that?
I think that what's the date? May 4th. I think the hot fire is done. Maybe this is being optimistic, but I think the hot fire is done. I think they're just sitting on a video, probably laughing at us talking about it right now. Like, oh, you guys wait till Monday. And I think, and even if it's not great news, like even if it's like we need a few more weeks for testing or whatever, I think there has been a test at least. And I mean, and as far as the stock movements, I think if there's no Archimedes test, mid threes, I bet. And if there is, especially if there's like we're about to sign contracts too, I bet we get around 5. That's my assumptions. What are you thinking for earnings? What's your bear case and bull case?
Yeah, similar. So I looked at the chart of Rocket Lab, and this is a very interesting stock. When it rallies like crazy. When it falls like crazy. So, and we have a channel on the stock price between $3.5 to like $7. So I think that if we get good news and good momentum, like it could be that we gradually, like, you know, every day, like 3%, 3%, 3%, 3%, like we go over 5 and maybe even reach 6. And if we get bad news, it could be that we go back down to the 3.5s. I think for me, it's very, very unlikely that we would get new lows. I understand theoretically it can happen, but I think that the stock is very, very underpriced. You know, we have gotten reaffirmed by the because I think that, you know, you have the stock and then you have the macro that is really moving the price. And the only way that I could see the price go lower is if they miss on everything. And I think that, so like, meaning that Neutron is delayed, it's more costly than they think. I think this would just take the stock back to new lows. But what would, like, to at the level of the lows, but what would have to make it lower is, you know, the Fed raising interest rates, or, you know, the macro becoming like substantially worse. And we have gotten confirmation or reiteration by the Fed that they're really not thinking to raise interest rates. Like, this is the top. I mean, I know it's also like Powell cannot promise this, and he was the guy who said inflation is temporary. So it's like he's definitely not always right. But I think that it very much feels like the macro is the toughest right now, and it's just going to be easier and easier for Rocket Lab. So yeah, very unlikely for me that we go below 3.5 or 3.45. I think is the lowest.
Mm-hmm. And I think, like, even if there is an announcement like the hot fire is not ready, I would be willing to bet they've got some cards up their sleeve, as like maybe it's the reaction wheel customer announcement, because we did see something kind of like that. Like, remember when we had that anomaly in Q3, or was it Q? Yeah, it was Q3, and they released that whole, like, this is our 2024 manifest, and it was kind of like, oh shit, like they're going to do 22 launches this year. That's like more than double. And it was kind of like they had a kind of a way to spin the bad news into like, hey, like, don't count us out yet. So I think that maybe, and even if it's not the reaction wheel customer, I think there's been at least a couple more haste launches signed. And I think that's why they haven't been announced yet. It's because maybe they're like kind of going to give us I don't want to say blowout, but like kind of keeping the good news, like we might need something for earnings. So I think like all this to say is, like, even if it's not great news, I think they still have a bit of a backup plan.
Yeah, I mean, what this earnings season has taught me is that the CEOs, they're definitely looking at the stock price. And I think that that's why the bears have such a hard time, is because, you know, like when the stock price falls, companies don't just watch them go down. You know, like they have employees, they have stock-based compensation, their own, you know, personal wealth is usually tied up in the company. And, you know, Tesla, everybody was expecting that they're going to report a horrible quarter and it's going to keep crashing after the quarter. And they did come in with a triple miss, you know, and yet and yet they knew exactly what to say. They knew exactly what to do. Apple is also a recent good example, you know, that they came in with a very lackluster quarter, and then they magically announced the biggest buyback in corporate history, and then the stock was up 7%, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we shouldn't count management out. They playing the game, and I also think this, that they can have cards up their sleeves.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Cool. I think we did a good coverage. Let us guys know in the comments what you think is going to happen on earnings, and we are definitely going to be. I'm going to be doing a live on earnings. I don't know if you're going to be doing one.
No.
Okay. If you want to be on, you're always invited.
Okay.
And
cool.
And I'm trying to do a bigger Rocket Lab weekly with a lot of Rocket Lab creators after earnings. So please make sure that you tune into that. And Matt Money, you need to come back to Rocket Lab weekly. So yeah, have an amazing earnings. It's in 2 days. Very exciting. And thank you, Scott, for being here. And yeah, see you everyone soon.